Blue Mind is a platform to raise consciousness and to elevate your performance and develop your physical and emotional health. We interview experts in mind and body, writers, sports people, entrepreneurs, and those with an inspiring story to tell to help us all raise our performance to the next level. So welcome to Blue Mind. So welcome to another Blue Mind podcast. I've got Mark here on screen. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Ed, hello, everyone. Thanks for listening again.
Well, that's good. To our 57 subscribers, welcome. It's going up, not down. That's good. So this evening we've got the amazing human being David Haze is with us. Hello, David. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And hello to the 57 subscribers. I hope you're doing well.
Thousands of views. So David is an adventure seeker. He's an award-winning environmentalist. He's a public speaker. I'll put my teeth back in. Does a lot of work with ex-offenders. He's got an extremely interesting past. I've known David for a couple of years. He's an absolute inspiration to me. He's also known as the Nomadic paddler, which gives an in as to what kind of stuff he's up to. David is a world record-breaking stand-up paddle boarder, and he shows, most importantly, that change is possible for absolutely anybody. So welcome, David.
Yes,
thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you for that intro. And as you said, I think change and growth are just two vital tools for everybody to have to go on to live a much more meaningful and positive life.
Great stuff. I think it's probably opportune to start at the beginning and maybe talk a little bit about your family background or your bringing up background, and then talk through your life and some events that led you to where you are today, which is doing some incredible adventuring and leading the way in paddleboarding. And also, I didn't mention that maritime environmental work and also the other stuff I talked about. So who is David Haze?
So growing up, my father died before I was, before I was young. So before I was born, sorry. So my father died 3 months before I was born. And in that moment, I never really thought it would hit me that hard. But growing up, and as I'm becoming more of a man myself, I realized that actually not having that dad in my life and that father figure was really hard for me. But we'll get to that point later on. So growing up, because my dad was military, I went to a military boarding school from the age of 6 to 12. And I really took to boarding school, and I really took to the military boarding school. And I think I took to it more than my mother really wanted me to. And what was really great, it was the emphasis on the great outdoors and adventure. And I really enjoyed that school, and I really enjoyed the weekends. And because it was military school, we used to get camouflage gear and all the army gear from other parents. And on the weekends, we would dress up, we'd put camo paint on our faces, we'd take the ration packs up and start cooking meals up in the Surrey Hills. We were only 10 years old. We shouldn't be doing this at the time. And then the school bells would ring and we would disappear and we would hide from the teachers, and they would spend hours for us on a Saturday looking for us. But I just loved that thrill of being outside, and I really loved that emphasis on adventure. And after I left that boarding school, I went to another boarding school. And that's really where my thirst for adventure and sport really took off. So I became captain of the rugby team, captain of the athletics team. I became a national champion sailor. I played county rugby. And I was just thriving for the sports at that school. I was just really, I was the main sports guy. Won all the medals, and it was great. Went to university to study music, and I was starting to get to a loose end. My girlfriend at the time was doing really well in the TV world. She worked for QVC. She got a job in London. I really hadn't found my feet after school and university. So I followed her to London. I ended up applying for a job to work for a Forex company, so trading foreign currencies. And suddenly it turned out I had quite a good knack for this. I was quite good at trading these currencies. So I was doing really well at the job, earning some great money. But one thing I noticed is I lost my identity. I never enjoyed the outdoors and the adventure side of anything anymore. And one day I lost my job. I got too big for my boots in that company. I thought I was better than my boss and all that. and I lost my job and I got fired from that job. And in that moment was when my life completely changed. That was the first biggest failure I ever had to deal with in my life. And where I'd been so sheltered in boarding school, and where I never had a father to go to and ask for advice and anything, I didn't know what to do with myself, and I didn't know how to deal with that failure. And that's where my life completely spiraled out of control, which resulted in 2 years in prison.
Wowza.
Yeah.
Do you want to, being brutally honest, do you want to go in what got you into jail? Are you okay?
Yeah, no, I'm a completely open book. So I lost the job, and I turned to gambling and I turned to cocaine. Like, I was already using cocaine as a recreational drug, but I started using it a lot more. I thought it was a great substance to numb my pain and hide the shame and everything, but it really wasn't like that at all. And the gambling was to try and earn some money whilst I was looking for jobs. But the gambling and the drugs just took over. I wasn't looking for jobs anymore, but I was lying to my partner at the time. I was dressing up in a suit every morning, disappearing at the time I should be going to work. Yeah, and then I'll be in the casino. Well, first off, it's to score some drugs, go to the casino or go to the bookies around London and try and earn some money. And I just burnt through all the savings that I had. And eventually, when I lost all the money, I then was picking up some drugs, and I was just talking to the guy I used to pick up from, and he asked me. He knew I had some contacts through the broking world, and he had some stolen goods. Basically, he had some gold, and he asked me to move the gold. I was like, I can do this. I said it. Got a bit of money for that, and I was arrested for that. I got caught, and for a year, the police told me that you're going to jail, you're going to jail, you're going to jail, and I kept that to myself. And in that year, I got another Forex job, became a business development director for another Forex firm, great salary, but I still had this whole thought that I was going to jail. And the day the court date came, and I hadn't told a single person that all this had happened, that still to this point, nobody knew that I was gambling. My girlfriend didn't know I was taking the drugs. I just lied, and I managed to sort of blag it. And that day that court date came, I was like a pressure cooker, and I just had a mental breakdown. I disappeared. I tried to take my life twice, and I just vanished for 5 weeks. And in those 5 weeks, I turned to burglary, and that's what got me into prison. But in those 5 weeks, I was basically just a lost soul, just roaming the earth. I have no idea. 2 failed suicide attempts, and I was just a shell of a man. I just didn't know what was going to happen to me.
It's incredibly intense to listen to, because I'm trying to put myself into your mindset and position with that threat over your head. I mean, I think, would you describe yourself? I mean, psychotic's probably not the right word. Would you, in a form of psychosis, where you literally have checked out of your normal state of being?
What, in those 5 weeks?
Well, in the 5 weeks, but I mean, I'm trying to imagine what it must have been.
Yeah, in those 5 weeks, 100%, I'd gone. I checked out, and I think after the 2 failed suicide attempts, I probably was just looking for the next opportunity to go. But I think it was after losing the job. I think between I lost my job and that court date, there must have been 2.5 years there. So I was lying for a good year and a half and using all these drugs, and I still continued the drug use, and it was just to numb the pain. It was like, on the surface, when I had the new job, everything was fantastic. I was business development for this new startup Forex firm. It looked great, but the underlying issues were dire. It's all smiles on the outside, but when I was alone, it was just, there was no smiles, there was nothing. I was just like, what the hell am I doing? I have no idea. And it's just a shame, because all it would have taken was just to go to somebody and ask for help. Help is one of the scariest things you can do, and one of the bravest things you can do. And I think, especially as men, we just find it really hard to ask for help. But after it all came to light, if I just went and asked for help, it would have been a completely different scenario.
Wow. Mark, do you want to jump in there? I know that I recognize a few similar sort of backstory issues maybe you want to comment on. I don't know.
I am sat in it right now, because while I was listening to David, naturally you listen to someone else's story, you can relate to certain aspects, and suddenly your mind brings up those memories for you. So I literally felt like I was reliving it, even though it wasn't actually happening. Right? Extremely brave coming on here, sharing. It's
Cheers.
really appreciate that. I liked what you said there about asking for help is brave. It's so courageous, right? There's this common theme that you listening will understand, that men struggle to ask for help, and usually it gets to Joe Horton talked about it, about falling out of a plane without a parachute. It's only before you hit the ground you actually pull on that parachute, right? David, I've got a question. I've got a question for you then. So, what was the event or trigger that stopped the lying? Why did you stop lying?
It was prison. I didn't really stop lying until I went to prison. So I've done 2 terms in prison, but I remember the first time I'd been in prison and the extent of what I did in those 5 weeks. So it was 6 burglaries I did. And I remember going into jail. So I was remanded in court, and I told the police everything, all came out. My family eventually knew everything. And I tell you, that moment then, when they knew everything, even though I was sitting in an 8x4 prison cell, with no idea where my future is, where my fate is, just the relief of everybody knows it's all off my chest now. I was like, oh my God, it's horrible. It's got to this point. But the relief was just, I can't even describe to you like how great I felt, despite my surroundings and where I was. But, the lying didn't really stop until I was in serious trouble.
Isn't it amazing that I listened to that and that sounded so beautiful? As in the saying, the truth sets you free. Like, people might say that's absolute BS. It is so true, right? That acceptance, that vulnerability to stand up in that small little space and be so brave and open and honest in front of your family, like it is. I can feel myself welling up a little bit, because I was arrested for drink driving, right? And I had to stand up and be honest, but that was a fraction of what you're talking about. But it's that act of that I'm safe and I can just talk and I'm prepared to accept the consequences. Suddenly that negative energy, that all that emotions that you've suppressed for such a long period of time just disappear. They just go.
Yeah.
Isn't that like, it's amazing, isn't it? And that's why we do this. That's why we encourage people so often to talk, no matter how hard, no matter what the voices in your head say about don't do it, don't open up, people will judge you. I promise you, as hard as it might feel, and as painful as it might feel, it is totally worth it.
And what you just said there, people might judge you. Like, at the end of the day, the people that are going to judge you, they're the people that don't matter. You don't care about those people. The ones that love you and support you, they're never going to judge you. Like, at the end of the day, I've got a small family, and they're the ones that are important to me. They didn't judge me. Of course they were hurt. Of course they were upset, but they loved me and they wanted the best for me and they want me back. So even though, as I said, I was in that prison cell, it's like, all right, cool. Now everything's out. We've got control of everything. We can now move on to create, a better future. Because before I was open and honest, nobody knew what the result was going to be. Nobody knew where the destination was going to finish. But we had a starting block. Cool, right? We know everything. Everything's done. Everything's on the table. Now let's get through this. Right? A prison sentence is coming, but as a family, we'd get through this prison sentence, get the help you need, come out the other end, and then we can try and focus on this. But unfortunately for me, I didn't know that at the time. And when I came out of prison for the first time, I was too focused on making money again, getting on the road again, and really trying to prove myself again. And that's where it went wrong for a second time in prison.
Tell us more about that.
So I went to prison, and I was just so focused. Like, I was earning some good money again before I went to prison. Like, so I lost my job, got another job, and I earned some good money. Then I went on the run, and then I got a prison sentence. And I was just so focused to coming out, prove myself, because I think my whole life I've managed to achieve good things in my eyes at that time on my own. I managed to do this. I managed to do that.
Mm.
So when I came out of prison, I wanted to prove myself that I can do this again without help and support. So I came out of prison. I started my own business. Went really well. It was a recruitment firm. Earned some good money. Got in a nice relationship, which turned very toxic very quickly. She loved a lot of cocaine, and then I got into the cocaine again. We fell out. I spent all the company's money. Then the debt collectors started coming. Everything was spiraling out of control again. My drug use was getting heavy, and then I went back to the burglaries. And I remember second time in prison, and in that time I was just a completely broken man. Like, it was the point like the suicidal thoughts came into my head again, but I was just too broken to even comprehend them. And I was just thinking, how did I get here? How did I get there? Like, for a year, I was literally just a skeleton. I was non-existent in that year. And it wasn't until somebody forced me to do a yoga and circuit day. So it's 8 hours of just yoga and circuit training. And I remember in that moment, I was just felt so alive. And even though my body was in prison, my mind was somewhere out. It was somewhere else. And I spoke to the lady, Dr. Sarah Lewis of Penal Reform Solutions, who organized it. And I was like, who are you? Like, what do you do? So she's gone over to Scandinavia and looked how their prison reform system works. They got a reoffending rate something like 20%, where ours is 75%. So
Wow.
she tried to bring this whole model over to the UK. And in that moment, when I did the circuit training, there was just something in me. I was like, what is this? And I remember growing up, how much I loved adventure, how much I loved sport. And I lost that part of me. I lost that identity when I went to London. So I suddenly went on a journey of self-discovery. I started learning about who I was. Like, I haven't known myself for the last 10, 12 years. And this is when I started to realize, the impact of not having a father in my life meant to me as well. So I started doing all this research, reading these self-help books, start speaking to a therapist to truly, really understand myself and, the impact of what I had growing up. And I remember, and one of the biggest things I thought to myself was adventure was missing from my life. Like, that was a huge part of who I was. So I made a vow to myself to come out and live a life of adventure, because life is one giant adventure. So I came up with a motto, and it's through adventure we live. And I tried to live by that every day. And I started training more, growing my mind, learning about myself. And then this is when I realized how powerful growth is, and taking on this whole growth mindset and this being open to change. And I accepted all of this. And the world just became so much better. Everything became so much more positive. I became healthier mentally, physically. I had determination. And my mum used to send me paddleboarding magazines. And this is when I was reading these magazines. I used to paddleboard. And I thought, you know what? When I come out of prison, I'm going to attempt 4 world records. I'm going to paddleboard 4 of the longest lakes in the UK, attempt 4 world records, and hopefully I can achieve this. And suddenly this gave me hope, this gave me drive, this gave me purpose. It got me in touch with that person that I used to be. And I met a guy inside who was a personal trainer. He would train me up. And I remember speaking to the prison staff, and I was speaking to the other inmates, told them this whole idea of what I was going to do. And you know what they said to me? They said, you know what, this is twice you've been in prison now. It's like, you're a prison number, and you're always going to be a prison number. And I was like, that was the moment. That was it. I was like, no. Change is possible. And like, I'm not going to be defined by my mistakes here. I'm not going to be defined by my errors. Yes, prison is probably my biggest failure in life, but I'm going to make this become my biggest success in life. And I'm going to completely turn this around and use this as energy to never come back here and do some good and help others. Came out in April 2020, straight into lockdown, which was great because it gave me the opportunity to slow down, reconnect with my family, focus on my journey. And then that day, the day that came in June 2021, I went and paddleboarded those 4 longest lakes. I paddleboarded them in 4 days, and I set 4 world records. And I tell you what, that was one of the biggest and proudest achievements I ever had in my life. I came up with the idea when I was locked away in a little cell, and there I was standing on Lake Bala North Wales, the fourth lake, sun on my face. I was like, well done, David. You did that. Like, yeah, thank you very much. So you
Yeah,
did that.
fantastic.
It was hard work. It was very hard work, but you know, you've done that, and I just since then I've never looked back. Never looked back at all. And I try and
Uh,
go from strength to
felt
strength.
I felt every second and every word.
Mm.
You're such an inspiration. It's pretty glib words, I guess, if you've not lived that experience that you've had. I mean, I guess I guess the concept of rock bottom is fairly familiar to you, and I think I'm trying to point to in that time of sort of decline, right, from going to London, taking drugs, starting to commit or become getting into criminality, and then obviously going to prison once, then twice. It's the sort of question that people that ask is, well, obviously you went to prison once and you came out and did it again. Why was the second time different? What was it? Was it that event with Dr. Sarah Lewis, or was it just you really had hit rock bottom the second time?
I really had hit rock bottom. But the first time, I was just in my mind, like I managed to achieve a lot of great things in my life on my own. And that's when I didn't realize the whole concept of help and asking for help and being open, being honest. It wasn't until the second time when I was at rock bottom, and then Sarah came forward, or not Sarah came forward, I met Sarah, and then I just realized I just need help. Like I do need help. I need support. Like stop trying to be so proud and macho.
Yeah.
Like just you need help. You need support. And to this day now, I'm always open. I'm always honest. I'm always trying to get support and help. And you know what? You just always got to do it. Like
it seems to me, if I may, the hypothesis is that because you continued to deny that truth that you had, because you didn't ask for help, the thing just it exponentially just got worse and worse. And the longer you left it, the harder it was to unpack and unravel. And I can kind of imagine being on your so independent at boarding school without a father figure. You'd led your whole life being, you know, obviously a very, you know, good looking, well liked sportsman, sort of extrovert type character. The idea of being so independent and of thought, and then suddenly having to change that mindset to you don't need to be on your own. 10% of me can understand why you were unable to even begin to understand that other people were in this challenge with you and in this pain with you. I don't understand because I've got a very different family background, and obviously we haven't been in the same place. The other thing I was going to say, and I think a lot of people, men, can relate to this, is I think we've all been in circumstances where we've been very close to getting into deep shit, whether that's drink driving, you know, taking drugs, whatever. A lot of people have probably, and no disrespect, Mark, if Mark had hit someone in his car drink driving, he would have probably ended up in jail. So I think we all can see how this can happen. Certainly I can see how it can happen. And I think someone of your background, it's all the more prominent and prevalent and relevant that someone like you shares this story, because it's so relatable, right? I mean, it's maybe people will go, well, I would never pass on stolen goods. I would never burgle houses. If you're in a psychosis, right, in a breakdown, you kill yourself, right? That's why 6 men a year kill themselves, because they're in an altered state of mental health. So we need to stop, and message to myself, stop judging people because of the badges that society puts on them, and offer up true understanding of how the mind can send you into these situations. And you know, clearly you had a lot of, I mean, I don't like calling it mental health, but clearly you had a lot of emotional stress to the point where you had a breakdown. And whilst it's not probably right to excuse and defend your behavior, it's understandable. And I think that's the point. And if forgiveness is therefore necessary. So I guess the point to people watching this, if they're impacted by it, is that please don't sit with secrets and lies and fear of judgment and fear of being told off, or even worse, because David is a great example through the honesty and what you're showing and sharing, that, you know, holding it in is not an answer either.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. And like, you know, and if we talk about prison as well, I'd say 95% of the men inside and women, like, you know, they didn't just wake up to decide to commit a crime. There was leading factors to that, which would be, you know, could be drugs, it could be mental health. Like, you know, they just haven't had the right help, the right support, the right guidance, and they haven't gone forward and asked for it as well.
Yes.
And it makes a huge difference. But at the same time, you can't just expect help to come to you. Like, you need, the first and foremost, like, you need to ask, you need to want to change, you know, and until you want to change, you know, that's when things can happen. But if you're not willing to change, you're not willing to ask for help or anything, you can't just expect to change and become a better person. You've got to realize that, you know, shit, I need to change and I need help. And it's like the same with rehabilitation. Like, you see it inside time and time again. Like, people go to prison, they expect to be rehabilitated. It's like, no, you need to want to be rehabilitated. And that moment when that happens, then there is so much help and there's so much support for you. But until that day, there's unfortunately not going to be anything for you.
Yeah.
100%.
I absolutely applaud you. Mark, do you want to say something? Sorry.
No, I was laughing because while David was talking about change, I wrote down P1, priority 1, willingness to change. And while I was writing willingness, he really said willingness. But it's so true, right? And you know, without sounding like a broken record, many people reach out to us, right, throughout the year. Only, I'd say 5% of those people actually change, because some people are vulnerable enough, right? A large percent vulnerable enough to initially open up and go, this is my problem. However, it then doesn't follow a process of willingness to change and then accountability. They're not surrounded in an environment or a culture that holds them accountable to the person that they now want to become. And they go from unconscious incompetence, right? You don't know what you don't know, to conscious competence, and they're actually stuck even more because they're like, oh shit, I'm now aware of all these issues I have, and I'm not doing anything about it because change was so hard. And that willingness is absolutely vital. There are a couple, if you don't mind, there are a couple of key points I just want to highlight based on what I've heard from the story. Brilliant around Dr. Sarah Lewis.
Dr. Sarah Lewis of Penal Reform Solutions.
Amazing, right? Ed and I talk about this an awful lot. The how already exists, right? Support and help. For some reason, we think asking for help is people aren't going to know what to do, etc. The how already exists. The solution to your problem, the challenge that you have right now, that yes, you, the person listening to this, right? The solution already exists. You just have to go and find it. Dr. Sarah Lewis, an absolute expert, right? If you are somebody who's recently come out of prison and finding it hard to find your feet, reach out to David. The how already exists. He has done that, right? If you're looking to get a small business off the ground, speak to Ed Bassett. Yeah, it's the how already exists. So proactively go out and find that how. Yeah, reinforcing a very important topic that we touched on a number of times in this conversation is this asking for help. It is vulnerability. It is surrendering, right? It is surrendering to those dark thoughts, that pain, and going, do you know what? I need some help here. And as David said, the people that love you, the people that truly care about you, they will find a way. They might not know how, right? But the how already exists. They will find a way, and showing up is a massive part of that. Amazing conversation around leadership and fatherhood. That's something that, Ed, we really need to continue to talk about, because it's something as fathers very important to us. My father, as I've spoken openly, is an extremely loving man. However, his father was much older when he had him. He was an only child. He never learned about leadership or guidance. He showed love in the form of support as opposed to that guidance element. And it is about surrounding yourself in a community of people that can provide that leadership and provide that support, guidance, accountability. And the biggest thing for me, and I'm talking about this now because I can relate to it, is this sense of identity. right? David mentioned it quite early on in the conversation in terms of he'd lost his sense of identity. The things that lit him up, that gave him energy, he stopped doing. Being outside, adventure, yeah. Through adventure we live. What an amazing saying, yeah. But what an amazing saying. I can relate to that. I come from a non-sporting family, a family that are not particularly active. I found a lot of joy in expressing myself through movement. You know, not having to say words, but I would play multiple sports and I learned to express myself. It brought me a huge amount of joy. In my married life, that stopped because of commitments such as increased hours at work, working in the city, fatherhood, etc., prioritizing the relationship, and then you lose your sense of identity, your sense of playfulness. Yeah. So if that sounds like you, I would encourage you to reflect on that and find, whether you're in a relationship or not in a relationship, find how you can regain that sense of adventure.
Brilliant words, Mark.
Conscious I spoke an awful lot there, guys.
But I think it's important, like as you said, even like, you know, relationships with partners as well. It's like, you know, my partner, for instance, she's very open to what I do. You know, despite I just come out of the blue of like, oh, I'm gonna 2 weeks time, I'm gonna go and do this, and she supports it, and you know, and that's great, and I really like that. But if she wasn't that type of person, I think that would really have a negative effect on me. So it is finding the right person, and it's being honest with yourself as well. If you know, if she wasn't the person and she'd be whinging at me all the time, puts me in that dark place, then I'm gonna have to have that open and honest conversation with myself. And don't think this is right for me. Like, I'm changing to please her. Well, I've got to be myself. Obviously, there's give and take in every relationship and everything you do, but you shouldn't have to change yourself too much.
Wow.
You know, to please other people. And I think that's really important.
Man, we could talk for days about that very sense. About, are people, men and women, able to be themselves in a relationship? What are they hiding? What are they changing for? What are they being asked to change? And it's if you're constantly being asked or being expected of to be something else, I can only see one way that's going to end. And I agree, there has to be some middle ground, of course. But not to a point where, and I think we've all found ourselves in relationships where we're being expected to be something else. And if men and women are sitting in that place, it's a pretty lonely situation to be in. Great, amazing conversation, Mark. Thank you for your words. I thought you really put it extremely succinctly and eloquently. Let's up the tempo for the last 15 minutes. So I'm conscious, Dave, you probably get a car park ticket any second. So
private car park. You're all right.
I want to. I mean, I think there's so much to learn from what we've already spoken about. If we ended it now, it would be good enough. But I want to hear about David now. I can sense the gratitude and how at peace you seem with your story, and it's really nice energy to be around. Very inspiring. I want to hear what you're up to. I want to hear what the hopes for your life are. I want to hear. And finally, maybe just to sum up after all of that, in terms of obviously where people can find you, what you're looking for in your business. Hopefully someone will see this and can contact you. So where are you at now? What have you been up to adventuring wise? What's in the plan? And
So after I did those 4 lakes that I briefly mentioned earlier, I was trying to raise money for the Alliance of Sport to use the power of sport in the criminal justice system to help transform lives. And I was very short from hitting my target. So I put a post out on social media. And I was like, if you help me reach £2,500, what I was trying to get, I was like, I'll go and paddleboard the River Thames and I'll try and break the world record for that. I ended up raising £3,000. I was like, right, it looks like I'm going to go and have to do the River Thames. So I went and did the River Thames. And I'll tell you what, I didn't sleep for 33 hours. I broke the record by 10 hours. And I tell you what, in those moments that I was really pushing my body, what I was learning about myself was better than any rehabilitation program I've ever been on, in prison, better than anything I've ever been on in my life. In those darkest moments at, 3 a.m, I've been awake for 30 hours, I'm starved, I'm fed, I got these demons in my head. That was the moment that as an individual, I realized that I changed, because I grabbed those thoughts and I listened to them and I just shut them down and put them,
Oh,
sent them away. And I
yes.
was like, no, I've changed. And that's when I realized that I've changed as a human being and I'm on the right path. And I remember there was one point and I brought my board out of the water early in the morning again, and I nearly snapped the fin. And I was thinking, like, if I just stamp on this fin and I could snap this, I can go into the world and tell the world, unfortunately, my fin snapped. I had to call the project off. And I was like, no, 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 no. That's how you used to think. You don't think like that anymore. You think of your positive solutions. Like, you still got energy in the tank. You can still do this. Like, wait for daylight and just grabbing those thoughts. So I went and did that. And as I said, after that, I just had this real thirst to learn more about myself and use power as a tool for therapy and growth and change. And from there, I went to Southern Ireland and I got the world record on the longest lake in Southern Ireland. I went and did the Loch Ness, got the world record for that. And then a sponsor flew me to Iceland. And I've only been out of prison for 2 years. And I remember I had an Airbnb right by the longest lake in Iceland. And I did filming it for myself. I did a bit to camera and I just cried. The sun was shining. It was cold. There was the lake. It was the mountain. There was snow. I was like, 2.5 years ago, I was in a prison cell, and here I am 2 years after my release. Somebody has paid for me to be here and do this late. And I was like, the power and the determination that gave me to just to keep on pushing, keep on sharing my message, it was just immense. So I went and did that. I then came up with an idea to do the world's first completely carbon neutral, environmentally friendly expedition. So I got a paddleboard. I had a paddleboard that was created from materials found in a skip. All my equipment was sustainably sourced, environmentally friendly. I had food that was ethically sourced locusts and crickets. And I went and completed this challenge. From the back of that, I became Ocean Activist of the Year. We made a film about it, which won Best Sup Film at International Film Festival. I then last year became International Sup Man of the Year. I then had this desire to keep pushing the boundaries of my sports and my limitations and see what I could do. So I started paddleboarding high altitude lakes. So be the first to trek to these lakes across Europe and be the first to paddleboard them. And then suddenly I've got magazines and companies calling me the pioneer of high altitude paddling now. I've now got good sponsors. I'm starting working with a company called Extreme International, and having talks with Red Bull. And this year I've become a full-time adventurer. So I've been hustling all the way, working in the criminal justice system, helping others. And this year I've become a full-time professional adventurer. So I get a basic wage. And what I've been doing is every month this year, I've been trying to raise money for charity, and I'm taking on one big adventure. So beginning of the year, I cycled from my house in Bournemouth to Paris on a barrel bike, which is one of these bikes you can hire off a street. Then in February, I paddleboarded 4 miles every 4 hours, 48 hours, which was a challenge created by David Goggins, the ex-Navy SEAL, which, if you've never read his book, fantastic book. Last month, I paddled 310 kilometers in 3.5 days from the South Coast to the NEC in Birmingham to give a talk, because that's how dedicated I am to give talks and to sponsors. This month, I'm paddleboarding the Dorset coast, which I'm going to do hopefully within 24 hours. Next month, I'm off to go and do the English Channel tandem world record. I've got some more high altitude lakes going. I'm paddleboarding the longest, paddleboarding the Adriatic Sea to be the first for that. But the biggest project I'm working on at the moment for this year, which is still need financial sponsorship for, is I'm going to attempt 33 world records in 33 lakes across Europe in 66 days. So that's literally, I think there's 45 countries in Europe. I'm doing 33 of them because they're got lakes in them, and I'm doing that in 33 lakes, countries, and I'm doing it in 66 days. I'll just keep pushing, keep giving talks, keep helping the whole criminal justice system, try and change perspectives on people inside. But another thing that I'm working on, which we're launching next month, is I'm just about to start a charity called Freedom Through Adventure. And the whole idea is to help inner city kids and young offenders that may be stuck in, you know, places like London and Birmingham. We bring them down to the countryside here and we give them a whole weekend of adventure, and they become part of our alumni as such. So once they've come with us, is then you're part of our family and we will take care of you as much as we can afterwards. And my partner is ex-special forces and he's on SCS Who Dares Wins. So we're using a lot of those guys as well as mentors that are in that program, and his friendships as well, to really help these young people change. Adventure's completely transformed my life, and I want to give that back to other people who may be struggling in life, going down the wrong path, not understanding themselves, struggling, you know, with substances. You know, get outdoors, have an adventure, and it will completely transform your life. It's done it for me, and I want to give that to other people and help them.
Amazing, amazing. What a way to finish. Follow Freedom Through Adventure when that charity goes live. When is that charity going to go live?
So 10th of May, that's when we're going to go live. That's our first weekend. We've got a bunch of kids. We're taking them out, and there's literally 3 days of an adventure out in the Purbex. Literally, we're going to give them a taste of everything. And we've got a big outdoors name's going to come down. He's going to mentor these kids or give a talk for these kids that weekend. And then the whole idea is that we continue to keep, you know, touch base with these guys and hopefully give them some other, you know, give them a chance to learn tools about themselves, but give them possibilities they thought they might not have had whilst living in London.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. Ed, anything else to...
Yeah, David, where can people find you? It's your tags are...
So the main one, the thing I use the most is Instagram at Nomadic Paddler. You can also find me on LinkedIn, David Haze, Haze. And if you want to watch the film where we won the award, it is on YouTube. If you just Google Nomadic Paddler, you'll see the film, and it basically talks a little bit about my story from, you know, being a former prisoner to an ocean activist to a world record holder.
Incredible. I just wanted to sort of sum up. Thank you for that. I mean, I think a few things came to mind just for my own conclusion, if I may. I mean, I think when you hear an hour of your story, David, it's so wonderful to listen to that journey from where you've been to the good stuff that you're doing. But what occurs to me, and I've known you for a couple of years now, and I met you when you were starting a lot of this off, and you know, we tried to get some sponsor for you, and the company I was working with didn't want to get it. And I was deeply regretful of that because they felt it was a bit prickly because of the backstory. And all I can say, it's absolutely their loss, because seeing what you've done in the last 2 years and what you've got on your plate and how you've stuck it out when so many people were saying no, and you didn't have much, you had no money and no people getting behind you. And now I can feel that you're really getting some amazing traction, and you could have given up many times. And that's the story, right? The story, it all looks very nice with all the world records, but you're on the lake in the middle of the night when it's pissing down in the rain and nobody's shooting an Instagram camera at you. You're in the canal, you're sleeping by canals. And that's the David Goggins element. You know, it's the stuff behind the Instagram and behind the scenes that I applaud you for. And that is just so inspiring. And I'm so grateful that you gave it another shot to come and speak to us. And
of course.
This story, man, is just incredibly inspiring to people, and it will change lives as you changed your own. And I just wish you all the luck in the world, dude.
Thank you. And I've literally, it's the 9th today, isn't it?
Yes, I believe it is.
So the 8th, yesterday, was 4 years that I came out of prison. And I tell you what, it's been a hard journey to get to where I am today. But it just shows, just keep on going, keep on the hard work, you know, and just keep pushing. If you have a dream, don't give up on the dream, and just keep going. Like, I had a dream, I've had so many knockbacks, but I've kept going, and eventually just someone saw me and just gave me a chance. Like, you know what, we're going to give you that sponsorship. You know, it's a year's sponsorship. Like, go and now do what you want to do and prove to us that we're not wasting money. And then next year we'll come back to this, and hopefully it'd be great. And I spoke to some people I worked with a year ago. I emailed them the other week, and I didn't realize in that space of the year how much I'd done. I was updating. I was like, I've done so much in a year. It's like, oh my God, like, this is amazing. As I said, hard work, just keep going. When things are tough, when things are hard, and you want to give up, don't give up, stay strong, and just keep going.
Wonderful. Mark, do you want to finish?
Through adventure, we live.
That's it. Through adventure we live.
Through adventure, we live. David, thank you so much, bud. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this Blue Mind conversation. We hope you've enjoyed the content and ask a small favour that you like and share the page. The bigger the page, the more interesting the guest should be and the more content we can put out. If you are interested in talking to Mark and myself about any of the topics covered, coaching, speaking or any other collaboration, please drop Mark or I an email at ed@Blue Mind Approach or mark@Blue Mind Approach, or contact us on our social media channels. Thank you for listening.